Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's Ask Shelly segment. I have everybody on now. Everybody is logged in, patched in, cameras are in place. Thank you so much for tuning into this week's Ask Shelly segment. My name is Shelly Fanfan, and I am your emotional intelligence expert. I am the CEO and owner of Ask Shelly Consulting, where we specialize in providing psychoeducation to corporations and other business entities to assist them in achieving peak performance. I'm a licensed psychotherapist, so I also have the privilege of working with individuals, with couples and families in breaking through to their next level through the provision of interdisciplinary psychotherapeutic interventions. And basically, that is a very sophisticated way of saying counseling, therapy. That is what I do. And so I have the privilege of answering, and sometimes asking, depending on who it is, answering lots of questions. People always want to know what causes us to think and act the way that we do. And so a lot of the times when people hear what I do, they have questions. So since last August, what I do is come live on Tuesdays, highlighting a question that is asked of me, and I provide a perspective. This time, every Tuesday, is in no way, shape, or form an attempt to replace the therapeutic process that many of us need. And that process is a little different, much different, actually. You have to actually consent to treatment. It is a journey that you take with an experienced and anointed licensed provider that can assist you in breaking through behavioral patterns, thought patterns, emotional injury, what have you, to assure that you achieve the best version of yourself. On today, I'm providing perspective. It is for educational and entertainment purposes only. If you feel like you need more support and would definitely like to dive into some things that you have not necessarily dove into, if you want an assessment, if you feel like this is a time where you need additional support to break through to your next level, I'm the one for you. You can just call our office at 407-350-5070. A very easy way to do it is just to go to my website, www.askshelly.com, and you can plug and connect with me there, or you can simply send an email to info@askshelly.com. You can also send your questions. If you want your question to be highlighted on an Ask Shelly segment, you can do so by sending it to info@askshelly.com. You can also submit your questions right off of my website, www.askshelly.com. So now that we've gotten that out the way, I love to have your feedback. I think it's so valuable to hear what people have to say, whether you are responding to a question that someone has asked, or whether you are responding to a concept, an idea, or a topic that we are discussing. Today, we are talking about the state that most of our nation is in. That is, enough is enough. It's more like an expression, but it's also a mental state. Enough is enough. That expression, enough is enough, it evidences extreme desire for an undesired outcome to cease. Let me say that again. That expression, enough is enough, is an expression that evidences the extreme desire that someone has for an undesired outcome to cease. Enough is defined as much as required. Let me say that again. Enough is defined as enough is required. And so, it's the capacity to which something is required, the limit to where something is required, as much as required. That is the definition of enough. Let me say it again. The definition of enough is as much as required. And I feel like, are we really at enough is enough? Or have we gotten to the point right now where we have reached that capacity that this is what is required? Why wasn't it required at the first death? at the first act of injustice, the first looting, the first the first peaceful protest. Why does it have to get to this place? I think that we have surpassed enough is enough based on the definition, right? As much as required. Does it require this? Does it require all these senseless deaths? Does it require this? We are beyond enough is enough. In 2017, most of us said, woo, enough is enough. In 2018, many of us said, oh boy, enough is enough. In 2019, many of us said, oh Lord, I can't take another year like this. 2020 has got to be the breakthrough year. We said then, enough is enough. It's almost like in 2017 and 2018 and 2019 that this was all boot camp. It was a boot camp preparing us for these unprecedented times, that in those years, we had to really dig down deep. We had to build our resilience. We had to learn skills. Oh my gosh, we had to really access the wellness well that's on the inside of us. And here we are in such unprecedented times where we must pull out of our wellness toolbox. Guess what? We cannot pull out of something that is completely empty. And so today's show is to talk about this state that we are in. We are all having extreme emotional responses to what's happening in our time today. We are all experiencing emotional responses, extreme emotional responses. And what I'd like us to do today is talk about the main ways that we cope. It's important for you to hear it, to understand it, because we cannot overcome what we do not understand. And so we're going to talk about 5 main ways that people cope with extreme emotions. The 5 main ways, and they're not main, there are 5 ways that we're going to discuss. There's many more, but we're going to discuss 5 ways that we as humans attempt to cope, attempt to relieve ourselves of distress. The way that we deal with very emotionally provoking situations, especially when they are undesired. And it took me time. It took me time to decide to even do this today, because I was angry. I am angry till this moment. I think it's a little bit more controlled. I've been able to add some thought to it. I've been able to assess how I can use my gifts to be a part of the answer, which is something that, or a place or a stage where we should all get to. We can only vent for so long. We can only vent for so long. We can only vent, yell, curse for so long, and then we have to take action. So we're going to talk about the main ways that people cope. That way you can understand your own emotional response, so you're able to understand the emotional responses of others. And then we are going to revisit the 7-point prescription that we talked about at the beginning of the pandemic. The 7 points to living a life of longevity. An ideal life of longevity, right? So we talked about it being the pill, the prescription for ideal living and longevity. We're going to talk about that today as well. So again, we're going to first talk about the way that we manage extreme emotions as human beings. That's important for us, because we have to be able to understand how we're responding, because you cannot overcome what you do not understand. All right? So let's say this. Let's do this. We're going to talk about defense mechanisms. And I want you to hear the different coping styles. And I want you to tell me if that's something that you do or something that you've done. You may have multiple coping styles. So you may find that in this live that you find yourself doing more than one. And I'd like to hear how you're coping, what you are doing, if you find yourself electing these ways to cope. Now, I want you to understand how your defense mechanism works. I need you to understand how your defense mechanism works. So it's important for you, if you want to be a support to people, if you want to be a part of the answer, share this live. in hopes that it will fall within the line of sight or earshot of someone that needs to hear it. Defense mechanisms. I want you to think about a team of men, and I'm not being sexist. For the purpose of this live, I'll use men, okay? So we all have a team of men. Some of us, that team are many. It's like 50 men, maybe even more. Some of us don't have that many men in our defense crew, right? So I'm just building an analogy here. So what determines how many men you have on your defense team? Well, it all depends on what your experiences in life has been. Some of us have like 100 plus because you have been exposed to adverse experiences since you were a baby. And as a result of that, you have had to pull from your team much more. So you have a much stronger team and you have much more men. Some of us don't have that many men because we have not been exposed to much aversive experiences or challenging experiences or traumatic experiences or stress-provoking experiences. So as a result of that, we don't have as many men. Depending on whether you have 2 men or 200 men as part of your defense mechanism, their role is to guard your wall. Your emotional wall. If you're with me, let me know you're following. We all have an emotional wall. On the other side of that wall is the greatest level of vulnerability that we all have. Our vulnerability, our emotional injury, our damaging memories, all of that is behind that wall. All of that is behind that wall. And the men are responsible for making sure that nothing enters or nothing goes past that wall and nothing comes out from in back of it. Let me say this again. Your defense mechanisms are responsible for making sure that nothing penetrates that wall, either coming or going. So it's designed to keep those memories and that emotional injury and all that pain and all your vulnerabilities behind the wall. So let me give you an example. When you start going to therapy and you have an aggressive therapist like Shelly Fan that is prompting you to access memories from behind that wall, what do you think your defense mechanisms do? They pull out their guns, they pull out their machine guns, they pull out all of the training that they have had, and their attempt is to keep you from accessing what you need to heal. They're designed to keep you stuck at times because they just want you to function and they don't want you to be hurt and they don't want you to access that. So we all have those men and they are trained in different ways. They all have been trained in different ways. And they all do what has worked. Let me say this again. They all do and respond in a way that has historically worked. So a lot of the times what we have to relearn in therapy are those ways that we cope that are not healthy, but they have worked. So you're asking me to stop drinking, but that has worked. You are telling me to stop avoiding, but this is what has worked. We have to get to a place in this time where we can assess that the way that we've been coping with distress is unhealthy and to learn new ways to cope, more productive ways to cope with these extreme emotions. So let me go back to this defense team. We all have them. Let me know how many are on your team. I think I have about 200. And you know why? Why I have 200? Because I'm a psychotherapist and I work with pedophiles and I work with murderers. I work with people who have committed serious crimes when they were not psychiatrically stable or psychologically stable. And so I need my defense crew to be heavy and strong in order for me to continue to operate and absorb the pain and the emotional injury that many of my clients are going through. And let me rephrase. I don't necessarily absorb it, but I'm able to get lost in it with them or join them in that so I can guide them out and assure that they are achieving breakthrough. Jewel on Facebook says, I have at least 1,000. Okay. Some of us have a lot of those men, and they have been trained to respond to distress in different ways. Mayday, mayday, red flag, something's happening here. Racism, I can't go jogging. My son's black, my dad's black, uncle's black, something's not right. Our government's not protecting us. And now our defense mechanisms are ready to fire. And they fire in different ways. And I want us to hear it because sometimes we get so frustrated with the way people deal with things because it's not the same way that you deal with it. And we become very frustrated. But you got to be able to understand people are relieving distress the best way that they know how. A lot of the times, they may not even be aware. Let me say this. Your defense men are fighting. They could be fighting overtime without your awareness, because it's happening in your unconscious and subconscious mind. And so your defense men are going off. They are like working overtime. We are not going to allow the memories of the abuse and the molestation out of that wall. We're not letting our fear come from behind that wall, because I have children. I have a wife that I have to provide for, children to protect. I'm not letting this come. I'm not going to allow the abandonment of my dad or the abandonment of my mom or the death of my loved one to come behind that wall. I'm not going to allow it to happen. Right? And so our defense mechanisms say, okay, we're going to allow you to continue to function and do what you have to do. We'll fight, and you don't even have to know we're doing it. Right? So our defense mechanisms are fighting. We think we're doing good in life, and we're progressing, and we're achieving, and we're thriving. And our men are fighting like crazy, and we don't know it. We don't have to see it, and we don't have to hear it. But guess what? You will feel it. Because you will come home one day, or you will wake up in the morning and feel like, wow, I am just exhausted and I don't know why. I feel so emotional and I don't know why. I feel so angry, I don't know why. I feel so unsettled and I don't know why. It's because your defense mechanisms are working on overtime, and they're starting to break down. And little by little things are coming out from behind that wall, and we don't know how to process it. We really don't know where it's coming from, because our defense mechanisms for so long have fought in our unconscious and subconscious mind. But eventually what happens is you won't be able to ignore what you've ignored. It comes to a point where you are not able to ignore what you've ignored. And what happens is when those defense men start to weaken, because they've been fighting since you were 2. They've been fighting since your uncle started touching you and molesting you at 2. They've been fighting all the way up to your 30s and 40s, and they start to weaken. And so understand that our defense men, they fire and they defend you in different ways. So we're going to talk about how those defense mechanisms fire, how they respond. And this is how we cope, because our defense men have been trained to respond this way. The first one is denial. Denial. I want you to assess yourself, and I just want you to be honest. Like, I've been there before. Denial is your refusal to accept truth. And sometimes when that truth is quite obvious, denial. And so we are in a time where I personally couldn't watch the video. I couldn't. And we all know what we're talking about, right? You know what I'm talking about. I personally could not watch the video, but many have. It's undeniable. It's non-debatable. And it's so infuriating that something so obvious is still debatable and deniable to some. It's like the truth is so apparent and it's so blatant and it's so in your face, but we still deny it. But some of us, this is how we cope. We deny the truth because the acceptance of the truth would cause more distress. Let me say this again. Acceptance of the truth causes more distress Because if I accept the truth and I open my eyes to the truth, I have to now accept everything else that comes along with it. It requires us to take self-inventory and to really take a look at who we are as people. So I share this example all the time, and I've done this on previous lives, and excuse me, but I need to do it one more time because I really want to draw this analogy as clear as I possibly can. I was coming home, flying back into Florida. I cannot remember where I was coming from. And I think I was coming from DC, flying back into Orlando. And there was there was some chaos going on as I went through the security checkpoint. For those of you who follow me, let me know that you remember this story. So I'm coming through the security checkpoint and there is a woman that is going off. First of all, the airport is not where you want to go off. No matter how upset you are, you're going to have to use your anger management tools. You got to go into your wellness well. You got to do something, because that's not a place where you want to go off in this day and age. So she's going off about the fact that someone stole her carry-on. So she goes through the security checkpoint. She makes it through the metal detectors, and she's waiting for her bag. It never comes through. So apparently, by the time I'm coming through, she has been there for about an hour. The security men told her, you know what? Someone will realize that they picked it up and they will return it. Let's give it some time. So it had been about 45 minutes to an hour by this time, and she's going off. The person is not going to bring it back. I want to file a police report. This is ridiculous. It's been 45 minutes. I'm going to miss my flight. They should have already realized it's not theirs, blah, 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 blah. Then these men come out. There's about 4 or 5 of them, and they're dressed up in suits. They look like the FBI or something. Don't know who they were, but they come out and they try to calm the lady down, and they tell her this. They said, ma'am, we've reviewed the videos, and we have video footage from the time that you were dropped off at the airport. We see when you checked in. We see when you got your boarding pass. We see when you made it through the first line. We have video footage all the way up to this moment. And ma'am, we are here to tell you that when you got out of your cab, you did not come out of the cab with a carry-on. Would you like to review the video footage? Guess what? Not only did she refuse to watch the video footage, continuing to maintain that she did have a carry-on, she continued to demand police. They're telling her, we have the video footage. We can show you and prove to you that when you were dropped off, you did not leave that vehicle with a carry-on. Many of us are that way. And I know it may seem like, oh gosh, like, you know, who does that? We do that sometimes. When the truth is right in front of our faces, where it's clear as day that that man ain't good for you, when it's clear as day the woman is not good for you, it's clear as day that that fast food stuff is killing you, it's clear as day the things that we need to accept as truth to make sure that we are becoming better, accepting the truth as what it is. We all do it in some way, shape, or form. We have adopted and elected denial as a way to cope through some type of distress. We do it a lot when we lose people, find ourselves calling them, having a hard time accepting the truth for what it is. And so for some people, those defense men fire in the form of denial. That becomes a mechanism. And I know it's frustrating for us guys when you are talking to people who are in a state of denial, but understand that it is a coping mechanism, a way to relieve oneself of distress. The second coping mechanism we're going to talk about today is avoidance. Avoidance. You may say that denial is avoidance. The difference is that in denial, they are really hell-bent on what they are declaring as the truth, even though it's not. With avoidance, the person is aware of the truth. They are choosing not to deal with it. Now, let me say this. There's some escape avoidance that's healthy, right? When we take the news in doses, when we avoid certain stations, when we avoid the news, we're going to give ourselves 5 or 10 minutes, in the morning, 5 or 10 minutes at lunch, or whatever you're doing to create some boundaries for yourself. That's some healthy avoidance. But there are people that are in a state of escape and avoidance for lots of stress-provoking things in their lives, right? And they just shut off the rest of the world. They just shut off. They escape and they avoid at all costs. And sometimes that escape avoidance includes drugs and mood altering substances, alcohol, to be in an altered mindset, so I don't have to deal, so I don't have to take a look at what's going on around me. Escape avoidance is another mechanism that many people use. So we have denial, and we hate the deniers. We just want to go off on them on social media. How can you defend this? But it's a mechanism. Remember, the truth and accepting the truth is more distressing, right? So they deny. Then we have those who escape and avoid. They shut out. They act like it's not happening. They alter their mindsets with drugs and alcohol at times, or anything else to keep them removed from what's going on around them. The third one that we're going to talk about is aggression. So we talked about denial, we talked about escape avoiders, and we're talking about aggressors. And this is a form of coping that is channeled, again, through aggression. That aggression could be verbal aggression, right? So they're on and they're cursing, they're offending with their words, they're insulting with their words, they're angry, and they're channeling that through verbal aggression. Sometimes people channel that through physical aggression, and whether that be property destruction or property disturbance or physical altercations with others, this is how they have learned to channel extreme emotions aggressively. Some people have an aggressive form of coping, but they have learned acceptable ways, legal ways that are more productive than punching someone out or breaking into stores or whatever, and all these things that we see happening right now. And they will take it to the gym. They will take it to kickboxing. They'll go boxing. They'll do something. They have learned ways to channel that aggression in a healthy way. And so it's not all unhealthy. It's not all damaging, but it is a form of coping, aggression. And we're seeing a lot of that. We're seeing verbal aggression. We're seeing it in our social media posts. We're seeing very emotionally charged posts. Not all of them are verbally aggressive. Many of them are, but this is another way of coping. We talked about denial, escape avoidance. We talked about aggression. The next form of coping that we're going to be talking about today after aggression is supportive. A supportive way of coping. Now, this is when someone reaches out to be helpful and supportive to someone else. So they are responding to those messages. They're validating people's emotions. They're asking how I can be of help, right? They're asking how I can be of help. They are just supportive. They want to be a part of the answer. This is supportive. This is a supportive way of, this is a way of coping. And so our defense mechanisms say, if I can be helpful, if Shelly can be helpful, if Marjorie can be helpful, Jewel can be helpful, if TJ Legacy can be helpful, if Dr. Sakisha can be helpful, then it relieves me of my distress. And so I'm not here to place a value on how people cope, but there is a danger to that one, because a lot of the time, the person who is playing the supporter in this, which is helpful, right? They are not necessarily addressing their own emotional experience. So it's just their anger, their fear, their whatever extreme emotion that they're dealing with doesn't necessarily get channeled or processed. They've learned how to relieve their distress, They've learned how to relieve their distress. However, they're not necessarily dealing with their own emotional experience. Those are our supporters. Let me see here. Let me go to the comments. So we have someone that says, I'm an avoider. Has anyone heard their form of coping yet? We talked about denial. We talked about escape avoidance. We talked about aggression. We talked about supporters. The next one are action. These are our go-getters. This is action. This is coping through action. These are individuals that recognize that they are angry. They recognize that they are holding aggressive energy. They recognize how they can be supportive and helpful to others. But they also recognize that the only thing that has the higher probability to affect change, to really modify, relinquish whatever has to happen with policy and other legislation that has gotten us here, is through action. These are individuals who deal with their distress through action. Last night, or actually all day yesterday, my bestie, she's the councilwoman for the town of Brookhaven in New York, and she hosted this forum for youth to log into Zoom and just share how they're feeling. They were allowed to curse if they wanted to curse. They were allowed to say, I want to fight and punch people, and I want to do this or that to whatever. I want to loot too, and I want whatever they wanted to say. They were allowed to say it in a very safe space. Guys, this forum started at 12 o'clock in the afternoon yesterday and ended at 8:46 in the evening last night. For 8 hours and 46 minutes, she gave the youth from wherever they logged in to from Zoom, wherever they logged in from on Zoom, to speak and share how they were feeling. It was empowering. They were able to yell, curse, cry. They were able to pray. If they wanted to rap, they could rap. If they wanted to read poetry, they could. If they wanted to sing, they could sing. If they wanted to dance on camera, they were able to dance. It was a beautiful thing. This morning, one of my highly esteemed women in my circle, Candy Bryan, she hosted a town hall that was just amazing at 7:45 this morning, where people were talking about how can you be a part of the answer. My fraternity brother, John Frazier, is hosting a town hall tomorrow night that I'm going to have the privilege of being a guest on. It's called Coffee for Your Soul. And he's bringing people together to talk about how to be the answer politically, how to manage your emotions in this so you could be effective in being a change agent. Action. These are individuals that hit the ground running and understand that it is only through action do we change things. That is only through actions that we will see the results that we want. It is okay to vent. It's okay to be angry. It's okay to do whatever it is you need to do to take care of yourself. But there has to come a point that we all take a look and assess and analyze, how can we be a part of the answer? And that is what I had to do today. Do I black out today, or do I continue to do what it is I believe God is calling me to do? And so here I am. So again, we talked about 5 different ways of coping. We talked about denial. I don't see it. It's not true. Denying the truth, no matter how blatant it is, right? That's denial. We've all been there. We've all been in that relationship a little bit too long. Right? So we've been there. Denial, escape avoidance. I know that it's happening, but I don't want to watch the news. I'm not going to engage. I'm going to get high. I'm going to get drunk. I don't want to deal with this. Right? Then we have aggression. I'm going to aggress. I'm going to be verbally aggressive. I'm going to offend. I'm going to insult. I'm going to fight. I'm going to do what I need to do to stay safe. I'm going to do what I need to do to process this distress. And some people do it in a healthy way and take it to the gym. Then we have those who are supportive, that it's through the support of others that they relieve their distress. Sometimes and oftentimes those supporters don't give themselves an opportunity to process how they feel. They give, and pour out and don't take the time to do the same for themselves. And then the last, these are our action-oriented folks who acknowledge the anger. They are also saying enough is enough. They recognize what needs to, they get it. They get it too. Sometimes I feel like the people that I talk to don't think that I get it. Yes, I get it. I understand it. Blackout Tuesday. Yes, I understand that. I just want to know, how does this change policy and how does this change legislation? How is it going to put us at the table? How do we get a seat at the table with this method? How do we get a seat at the table? Because if we don't have a seat at the table, we don't get on the agenda. And if you don't get on the agenda, you will be on the menu. If we are not on the agenda, we will be on the menu. Let me say this again. If we are not on the agenda, we will be on the menu. Action. So while we are all coping the way that we cope, and understand that your defense mechanisms are working overtime for you right now, you got to remember that we have to be intentional about taking care of our emotional space, our mental health, our emotional wellness. We must. And so how do we do that? How do we do that? Now that we know that, okay, this is how people are coping. I have a better understanding how people are coping. I have a better understanding of how I'm coping. I can see myself escape avoiding when I do this. I can see myself kind of being in denial right here. I can see myself being really supportive, but really ignoring what I need. I can see that. Now that I'm aware, what do I do? What do I do? And so for some of us who are struggling to the point where it's affecting your day-to-day operations, because guys, you have to understand this. And I don't want to repeat all of the things that I said a couple of weeks ago when I was talking about trauma, but we are experiencing trauma, full-blown trauma for some of us, not just emotional distress, but full-blown trauma, whether it be primary, secondary, because secondary trauma is when it doesn't necessarily, or the issue did not necessarily directly happen to you, but just being an observer of the trauma, you now have that symptomology. So you can't sleep. You're not getting uninterrupted sleep. Your appetite is affected, whether you're eating more or less. You're emotionally eating. You find yourself depressed. You find yourself crying. Some people are saying, I've just been crying for days since this happened. I'm experiencing panic attacks, or I don't know what this is, but I just have this like tightness in my chest, and I don't understand what that is. That's anxiety. That's a low-grade panic attack that you're feeling inside of your chest. Some people are saying, I'm so angry. I just want to just yell. And that these are forms of depression. These are forms of distress. These are trauma responses, traumatic responses, emotional responses to trauma. And one of the things that I said in that live when we talked about dealing with secondary trauma, I talked about how the trauma is increased when the socioeconomic status or the demographics or the general characteristics of the victim is close to yours. So what does that look like? The last victim was an African-American male. And so the chances of other African-American males that have similar characteristics or demographics or socioeconomic status, or the more the characteristics, the higher the chances and probability of experiencing this traumatic stress. Another factor that promotes us experiencing traumatic stress is how probable is this that can happen to me? How probable is it that you would be pulled over by the police? How probable is it that you will be jogging in a predominantly white area? Those chances are pretty high. So with that high probability, guess what? It increases the chances that we too will experience traumatic stress, trauma responses. And so because of that, don't ignore it. Speak with someone, get therapy, connect with someone that you trust. that you can talk this through, that positive friend, the one that always sees the glass half full, connecting with people that can support you. I'm talking people that are builders. Sometimes they may not think like you, and they don't have to think like you. They don't have to agree with you, but just people that can literally pour out into you and deposit into you, whether it's a therapist or a coach, a church leader, a friend, right? That's not in your blind spot. Because sometimes we have friends that are lost in our own, in the same blind spots that we are, but that we're getting the support that we need to work through this, that we are being extra careful, that we're not exerting ourselves too much in this season, that we are not committing ourselves too much in this season, that we're not making decisions that are based on emotional extremes. Because when our emotions are all lit up, and those emotional centers of our brain back here are all lit up, it suppresses our logical thinking. And so we have to make sure that we are finding spaces, that we're finding time to decompress. My 7-point prescription for ideal living and longevity, specifically that was birthed out of the pandemic, started out with being intentional. So when you have a broken foot or a broken ankle, then you know that you can't put pressure on it, right? You can't walk on it. You need a crutch. You need to rest. You need to raise your leg. There are certain things that go along with that state. So what do you have to do in this emotional state that you are in? Okay, what are those things? And be intentional about it. I have to connect with that dude. If he makes me laugh all the time, then that's the person that you want to connect with at least once or twice a day. Send text messages. What group can you start on GroupMe or your supportive circle, those 3 or 5 people? Just be intentional about the things that help you to feel well, the things that help you to feel fortified. It's important to be intentional about that. Understand that we are all being emotionally injured. All of us. Last night, oh boy. Like, you're violating the rights of peaceful protesters with the use of military presence and tear gas for a photo op. That was like super. Listen, I'm saying this, and yes, I'm angry, but I also want to say that I pray for that man every day, our president. And that was infuriating. Like, where is our country? How does this happen? There are many people that have to sign off and approve things before those things. So who all is in line with this type of decision making? Oh my gosh, it's injurious. Because now I can't sleep because I'm upset. And I'm waking up in the wee hours of the morning like, Lord, I know that you are in this, but it's all injurious. So we have to recognize this delicate place that we are in and align ourselves with people that can support us in this season. So it's about being intentional. It's about fortifying. Be fortified. Fortify your mind, your body, and your soul. Make sure that you are using this time to fortify your mind. How can you do that? Read books. There are 2 books that were recommended on a live that I was on. I'm still waiting for mine to come in. And this is the 2 books were, let me see if I have it noted here. The 2 books were Law 101, that is available online, LAW 101, Law 101. The second one was You and the Law, and that is sold by the American Bar Association. The purpose of these books is to help people to understand the law and how it is applied, to understand the loopholes in the law, right? Because people who understand the loopholes are those who are able to be millionaires and not have filed taxes in years, if you know what I mean. Okay, these are people that have found loopholes, that they have studied the law so much so that they understand how to apply it to their lives to have favor in their situations. So it's not just only knowing the law, but really truly understanding the application of it. So fortify your mind, fortify your body. Let's get healthy. Let's get healthy so we don't have that foggy brain. Make sure that we're eating in a way that gives us clarity, that gives us strength, that keeps us strong. Coronavirus is still out there. It's still out there. Be careful for the smoke screen. I was praying this morning. I kept hearing, be careful for the smoke screens, guys. Right? Let's not get lost. I'm sure they would love for us to start exposing each other and all die. So please fortify your body, fortify your soul. Whether you're doing that through meditation, I do it through soaking in the morning. I have an amazing soaking app that I use. It's incredible. It just takes me to a whole nother level. Whether you're doing that through going to church services, following TD Jakes on YouTube, or whoever does it for you, Steve Furtick, Mike, whoever does it for you, but making sure that you're being intentional about fortifying your mind, fortifying your body, fortifying your soul. The next is to be protective. Be protective, because remember, we're trying to heal our broken limbs, our emotional injury. So be careful with the amount of exposure you allow yourself to media. Give me an amen if you agree. Give me an amen, right? Just make sure that you are protecting yourself as it relates to the amount of exposure you're allowing with media. So I would say, just like I did with coronavirus, just make sure that you're giving yourself shifts, whether it's in the morning, afternoon, evening, but don't get consumed. Allow yourself to stay aware and informed, but try your best not to get consumed. So be protective of what you allow in your eye gates. Be protective of what you allow in your ear gates. There are certain people in this season that I can only take with doses, because I have a standard that I have to go by, because I call myself a kingdom ambassador, and my spiritual beliefs will not allow me to condone certain actions. And so if you believe that, I respect you. I just know that my exposure and my interactions have to be limited, because I have to protect my space. And so make sure that you are being protective over what you allow in your eye gates and in your ear gates to help you to stay effective in what your purpose is. The next thing is to be productive. And we talked about it. It can be, I spoke with one of my line sisters who I think is on now, and she's trying to organize and get people to, she's saying that people are direct messaging her on social media saying, I read your post, how can I help? Okay. That is such a crucial question. And if you don't have a response to that, shame on you. And she's saying, you can march with us. This is where we're meeting. The march is going to take place here. This is the starting point. And so make sure that you are being productive in this season, that you are finding your space. We are all one body. Find your part. I'm doing my part. I'm not very big on politics. I will never, ever claim that I am. I'm a psychotherapist. So I can't come on here and tell you this is what you have to do to change legislation. This is how you need to do to become more active in local government. I wish I had those answers. If you have those answers, feel free to comment. But I'm doing my thing. This is my thing. This is my thing. So I'm being the elbow. Be the ankle if you're the ankle. Be the pinky toe if you're the pinky toe. Do your part. We need a full body in order to make these changes. And so when you're done venting, which is very unproductive, get to action and let's do this together. So be productive. Use this time to really take a look at how you can be a part of the answer. Be productive. Next, be creative. Understand that those special abilities and skills and talents that we have were given to us as forms of medicine. So whatever that is for you, do that. My frat brother's daughter did a beautiful dance. Traverse Johnson, I just want to shout you out and your beautiful baby girl. And she did a dance on injustice. It's so beautiful. And I just looked at just the glory of God on her as she danced with all of her heart and her soul. My daughter is going to be creating a dance, and we'll be posting that soon as well. But use your creative gifts. Take your anger. I have a good place for you. Take your anger, take your enough is enough, take your pissed offness, if that's a word, and bring it to your gift. Bring it to your gift. Bring it to your gift. So make sure that in this time that you're still being creative, right? We want to make sure that we're giving ourselves the opportunity to heal and be strong in this, to stay well while we win. All right, say that with me. We need to stay well while we win. Stay well while we win. Okay, so be creative, be helpful. We need your help. If somebody wants me on their live, if somebody wants to interview me, if someone needs a mental health expert to talk about ways that people can deal and how do we overcome trauma, what are the signs of trauma, email info@askshelley.com. Reach out. You got me. If I have it on my schedule, I will be there. I will log in. The answer will be yes, as long as I have the time. Not necessarily that I have the time, as long as I'm not booked. We'll make the time. We'll make the time. But I want to be helpful. Since the start of coronavirus, I was like, Lord, I don't know, what can I do? So you know what I've done? Free consultations. I have not charged for a consultation since March. Okay? I have not charged for a consultation since March. My consultations are $145 for 60 minutes. I'm going to say that to you. I have charged zero. And I'm not saying that because I'm in a place or a position to do so. Trust me. It is because I am doing the work of the Lord and I'm doing what I believe is part of the answer. So make sure you are doing the same. How can you be helpful in this season? And the last, be hopeful. I said, and thank you, Marjorie, for writing, for putting that on Facebook. I said it's important for us to stay well while we win. I serve an amazing God, and He is all in it. He walked on water. He healed the sick, and he raised people from the dead. He Himself, He died and raised on the third day. And when He ascended into heaven, He affirmed every word that He said from cover to cover. I stand flat-footed on His word. I stand flat-footed on His power and His authority. I stand flat-footed in the authority that He has given me, that royalty that He's given all of us. So yes, I'm expecting a win. So make sure that your hope is rooted in victory, that your hope is rooted in victory. It is important to be hopeful. And while people are saying these are completely unprecedented times, we have been here before. So they are precedented and the victory is precedented. And so we have to stay hopeful in this time that things will change. There's a changing of the wind. There's a restoration happening in the earth. And restoration sometimes gets very ugly before it gets better. How does your house look when you're spring cleaning? How does your house look when you're spring cleaning? It gets really, really, really chaotic before it gets really, really, really good. And so this is where we are at. Worldwide restoration. And while we don't understand it all the time, well, our limited intelligence can't wrap our mind around all of the things that are happening, stand flat-footed in your hope that we will have the victory. Assure that you stay well while we win. It's so interesting that during coronavirus, many of us felt that there was a lot of unity that was developing. Was that only me? If you thought that Instagram, hello, Anthony Jackson. Hey, Dominic. Hey, Azam. Dr. Sakisha is amazing. I see Marjorie here. Jewel, you guys are rocking with me still here on Facebook. Thank you so much. And so was it just me? I kind of felt like, yeah, we were getting to a more unified place as a people. And now, in just a matter of 4 weeks, we're at our most divided place. And so stay flat-footed, be a part of the answer. Make sure that you are very clear about your emotional responses, actually your emotional reactions, and turn them into productive responses. It's okay to have emotional reactions. It's okay, we're human. But you have the power to transition that into emotional responses and actions that are productive. We all have the power to be a part of the answer. I talked about the amazing God that I serve and all of the amazing things that he has done. And for those of you, yes, Marjorie says correct, productive responses. Yes. It is okay to have emotional reactions. People are on, social media like, can't nobody tell me how to respond, how to this and how to that. No one, we have to say to ourselves, what is it that we want to see happen here? And if what you're doing doesn't promote that, then why are you doing it? I'm sorry. Is that just like, is that too much? Is that too deep? My friends tell me I think too deep. If this is your desired outcome and what you're doing does not promote that outcome from manifesting, then why do it? That's what self-discipline is about. Just because you feel like doing something doesn't mean you have to. Just because you feel like doing something doesn't mean you have to. Emotional reactions, I get it. But we have to change. We have to remember that we have the power to change those reactions into responses, productive responses that promote change. Now, I talked about this amazing God that I serve, an amazing God that many of us serve, right? And in his word, he says, greater works shall you do. Greater works shall you do. Greater works shall you do. Greater works shall we do. Listen. Go for it. Go for it. Be a part of the answer. We are in this time where it's like, this is, wow. Like we're reliving Bible times. We are a part of the answer. So be careful where you exert your energy. Assure that you're exerting the energy in the most productive way. Jewel says, so good. Just because you feel like doing something doesn't mean you have to, you don't. Feelings are not facts. Feelings are not facts. Come on, guys. We got this. Change the narrative. The only way to dispel hate is with love. It's the only way. So while we would prefer to knock some people out, and trust me, I'm a fighter. The coping mechanism, I was an aggressor. Yeah, I was an aggressor. And that has changed. I think I'm much more action oriented now, praise the Lord, because I can't be 44 beating people up on I-4. But we got this, guys. We got this. We're going to get through it. Reach out to me if you need extra support, info@AskShelly.com. Be sure to subscribe to my YouTube page, Ask Shelly. Email info@AskShelly.com. I really do love you guys, and we can do this together. So turn your emotional reactions to productive responses. We got this. Instagram, I guess since I'm not DJ Nice, they're going to be shutting this live down in just a few more seconds. Thank you so much for logging into this week's Ask Shelly segment. Be sure to subscribe to my YouTube page, Ask Shelly, and be great. Dominate. And that means even in your emotions. You have to dominate in your emotions before you can dominate on any mountain. So do that. See you, Instagram. And Facebook. Marjorie Colas says, Colas, am I saying that right? Thank you for your work. We love you too. I love you. I genuinely do. You know how people say, you don't know me? I'm just, especially with everything that has happened over these past 3 months, I've just learned to truly love people and really understand that we are truly brothers and sisters in Christ. So let's continue to support one another, post positive statements, encourage and empower people, teach us. If you're the one, I say this, if you know, how do we get involved in local government? Do we go to town hall meeting? What do we do? Post it. Post it. You got great books that will help us to understand the law better? Post it. Let us know. Let us know. Teach. We have to know. We have to understand how to get a seat at the table. Why? Let's repeat it together. Why do we need a seat at the table? Because if we don't get on the agenda, we will be on the menu. If we don't get on the agenda, we will be on the menu. They will eat us up. You get that? If we're not on the agenda, we will be on the menu. We need a seat at the table. Speak wisdom. Be powerful. Be productive. Manage your emotions. Just because you feel like doing it doesn't mean you have to. Be a part of the answer. And we're done for today. Thank you. Marjorie says we need to infuse positivity. Let's all do it. We got this. We are on the front line and we got this. Thank you again for tuning into this week's Ask Shelly segment. Again, YouTube, subscribe to my YouTube channel. All my videos are uploaded there, and all of my feedback and tutorials and workshops on all things emotional intelligence. So again, thank you so much for tuning in. I'll see you guys next Tuesday at 12.